Welcome back to the Renngineering YouTube and podcast, and welcome to another episode of Ren Builds for the Renngineering YouTube and podcast. Before we get into the episode, I just want to congratulate Jeremy Ellis-Jones for being the winner of the 1/12 scale Minichamps 930 Turbo. That is winging its way to you, my friend, right now. Coming up in this episode, the previous episode we looked at all the plans for this 2015 Porsche Cayman to take it from a very vanilla car to an outlaw. This episode looks back at some of those initial things I did and how I feel about them now. So, one thing I will note though is that there was a gap last week, and if any of you, I've had a couple of you reached out to say, where's the video? No, good point, I lost a load of the footage. It's so annoying when that happens, but rather than put out crappy content, I thought I'd try and figure a way out of doing it that is actually better than it would have been originally. So that's what I'm going to do. So in this episode, we're going to look at actually installing some of these parts, but I'm going to give you an 18-month reflection on whether I've liked them, hated them, or I just want to replace the lot and start from scratch. So if you like that, then stay tuned. So, reflections on this decal, the rear lid decal so far. It's been about 18 months since that's been on, and there was an outlaw decal that lived here. Now, if you've followed on the Outlaw Cayman Instagram account, it's just some curated pictures of this car through the years. It's really cool. I really love that decal. And I was heading to the Niners Unplugged episode that this car's been in. With Frank Cassidy, which is by far the thing that gets mentioned most with this car. That badge lived on there, that decal lived on there all the way through up until about half an hour before that episode. And a friend of mine and I were talking just briefly before I went in, and he was like, "Oh mate, I hate that decal, I think it's awful." Now, here's the thing, right? When you have a vision of your own about your car, sometimes that vision will pay off and it all comes together and it all feels seamless and cohesive and it all makes sense. Other times you do things and you step back and go, and then you've got a decision to make, right? Whether you take a step back and go, no, that's crap, I'm going to take it off even though it's cost me money or time. We go with it because you've sunk time into it. There's a sort of project programs portfolio thing called sunk cost, which is where you've put money into something and it biases you towards keeping it because you've spent money, even if it's not working out. Now, that outlaw badge that was on, this is the depth and the fussiness I go to with my builds. That outlaw badge, I debated it all the way up till driving in and I peeled it off. Shot the episode with it off, and then about an hour later after I drove off, I really missed it and I thought, wow, it really added something, and it isn't for everybody, but it is for me. So if you're watching this and you're in the middle of your build and you're trying to figure out whether something's going to work or not, sometimes you've got to just throw the money into it or throw the time into it and do it and see what happens. But the biggest piece of advice I can give you about building any sort of car is to think about the concept. What is it you're trying to do? Don't go away and buy a set of wheels because you like that set of wheels and a big fat wing, like Fuchs wheels, and then a giant wing on the back. Like, those things aren't compatible, right? So they don't work together. So I've had conversations with a friend who's in the middle of kind of this, thinking about what that car might look like. And that's the advice I'm giving him, is really consider what the car's going to look like at the end before you even start. It's a part of the Renngineering ethos, designed for purpose, and I will go into every single part of the build with that mindset. And again, this isn't an engineering build, this is just like me modifying my car and hopefully taking you on the journey for that as well. But in terms of the deck script and in terms of the outlaw badge, the deck script is perfect. I absolutely love it. I've never seen anyone else do it on the Cayman, and the outlaw decal is coming back. Now, diffuser. So this is a sport design or GTS, depending on how you view it, diffuser. This was one of the parts that kind of I wanted to introduce to the car that I didn't want it. It's a base Cayman, right? It's a 2.7 Cayman. It's not even an S. It's not a GTS, and it's definitely not a GT4. So whilst I have seen and I know companies that produce the GT4 kits, it's really common for people to put that on this car. It looks great. But I deliberately did not want that on this car. It was really important to me that it stayed true to the fact that it's a base model Cayman. An outlaw, but a base model Cayman. It may have an engine conversion or it may have hop-ups put on the car, but ultimately it's still a base model Cayman. So you're seeing some conversation before this about me introducing it, fitting it, all that stuff, but actually reflections on the parts, yeah, piece of cake. Building it wasn't easy. It was lots of really stiff clips, and it's quite a pain in the arse to do. It's not a disaster to do. It's not really that hard. Am I happy with the look overall? Yes. Is it aggressive enough? I think I probably, in reflection, would have considered putting the GT4 diffuser on, but then they're having the rest of it as it is, pretty much sport design or GTS. Those parts aren't designed to go together, and every time I look about this sort of stuff online, someone pipes up about aero. These things aren't aerodynamic. There's no aero being added with this bit of plastic, this tiny little fin here. There's no flat bottom to the underneath of the car like a Lotus would be, or like a 992 GT3 RS. There's all sorts of lumps and bumps underneath the car. So airflow underneath the car is not going to be flattened out and then filtered, and kind of, you're not going to lower the drag coefficient or increase the ground effects by having a couple of little fins on the back. Is pretty much just visual. One thing so reflections all this time after, the center trim here I reused off the original. They look ever so slightly different on the GTS than this one, and I think I do regret not swapping that out at the same time. I think cost at the time was probably a thing I was trying to strip down and make sure that I didn't spend too much money. I think I probably should have just bought that now. But I have a bigger plan, right? So all of these black trim pieces, you can buy them either primed or you can buy them in this black PU. I bought them in black PU. I thought that's the way I wanted to go. And then since having the 911 Carrera T, where all of these pieces are painted in a graphite, so I'm not quite sure what the color is exactly, but I really like that. So what I'm going to do, and this won't come anytime soon, but in the kind of long run, I'm going to replace all these parts and I'll sell them on afterwards, because there's obviously money retained in those, with the primed parts and have them painted in graphite. And that's quite a big cost. That means replacing the front, all the front plastics, these, potentially even the side vents in the car as well. There's quite a lot that I'd have to buy, then send to paint, and then you've got all the paint costs and then installation as well. So, but again, as a concept, as doing something different that other people haven't done before, I think that's going to look really cool. Let's stay on this topic and move straight on to the exhaust. So if I reflect on the exhaust now, Design911, this exhaust came from, and at the time I really loved the fit, the build, everything, and Design911 have been great. What I will say though, and this channel is completely transparent, the first exhaust that got sent to me I was super excited about, and you can see a bit of an unboxing a second or two ago, but the reality is the exhaust was not fitted correctly on the jig, or the piping wasn't on the jig properly, or the jig was just not right. Because when it arrived, one side fitted up perfectly and the other side just did not fit. It doesn't matter what I was going to do, it was never going to sit in the cradle that's just under here, and so it takes the weight off the back of the transmission and takes the weight so the exhaust doesn't just rest on the bolts at the cat. It took me a day of faffing with it to realise actually it wasn't me, it wasn't something I was doing wrong, it just wasn't fitting. What I will credit people with, and this is the point, right, is that stuff goes wrong, mistakes get made, even in manufacturing, with all the will in the world. It's how you respond to those mistakes. And I have to credit Design911 with this. I spoke to them, phoned them up, talked them through what my problems were. They didn't just immediately come back, well, it must be you then. They said, well, talk us through the process. And then I said, actually, this car is going off, I can't remember, it was an event the next day or within a couple of days. So I really did want to wrap it up and get it back on the road. I didn't want to not be able to use the car. explained that to them, and they shipped overnight for free a replacement exhaust, which consequently went straight on. So big fat win for Design911. We have bounced around ideas about Design911 and this channel working together. We'll see what happens in the future, who knows. The carbon fiber exhaust tips. So you would have seen, as I was unboxing, some carbon fiber exhaust tips. These are not carbon fiber exhaust tips. I removed those. They don't, again, the thing about the positioning of those, unless they're really high quality, the heat cycling and the heat that's, I don't know why, but the heat that comes out of this exhaust is quite a lot. I should get a sort of gun thermometer and see what it actually produces in terms of temperature, but it's a lot. So even the fact that the quality of those tips that came from Design911 are pretty good, after a relatively small amount of time, they started just sort of, the lacquer that was placed on top of the clear coat on top of the carbon just started going slightly yellow, and you can't do anything about that. So at the same time, the GT4 RS came out, and man, I love that car. That is the dream, right? So my passion for 911s is there, but my dream is, if I can afford it one day, is to buy a GT4 RS, and I'll do. If I ever get there, you trust me, I will be bringing you on the journey for that. But what I did want to do is try and find a way of picking up on some of those styling cues. These tips, and I'll lay some close-ups over the tips now. I bought these online and they were a custom order. They originally came in, I think, a 4-inch, and they had a brand that was etched onto the side that I was not, like, it wasn't, the exhaust wasn't from that brand. It's a very well-known brand. So I asked the company if they could make them in a 3.5-inch. They said yes, and I said, please don't put that brand logo on the side of the tips. I have absolutely no affiliation with it. It's not that exhaust, and they're not genuine. But they look pretty close in terms of styling, as you can see, from a GT4 RS. So it took a little while, obviously, for those to be manufactured and then sent over. I am going to start retailing those at some point. So if you're interested, drop me a DM or put a comment in the comment section below and let me know if you're interested in those for your car. But yes, and they've started, again, heat cycling now. So they've been on the car for about 3 or 4 months. Heat cycling with those has ended up turning them a lovely kind of gold color, because obviously the ones on the 4RS are titanium tips. These are not, these are stainless, but they've got very much the same kind of finish, like a shot blasted finish or the blasted finish. So love it. They've added something to the car. They've got they're chunkier than the original tips by a long way. They're chunkier than the carbon fiber tips, and they should naturally patina and have this lovely kind of color changing as they get older and more heat cycled. So they are a win. So wheels then. These are Boxster Spyder wheels. They came as singles. I had to buy them from all over Europe pretty much. It was actually considerably cheaper doing that than it was buying them as a set. And it all didn't matter anyway, because I knew I was always going to paint them satin aurum. So the gold against the white, I've had loads of comments. In fact, I would say it's the single thing that I've done on the car so far that people have said, wow, that just makes an enormous difference. I completely agree. The offset is perfect. It's not quite flush. It's ever so slightly inboard, but it looks great. I'm not going to talk about the company. I've been asked lots of times about who did the wheels. That company was dissolved, I think, about 18 months ago. And I know the person that ran that company had a particularly tough time personally. So I'm going to balance, this is now a reflection all this time later, the longevity of the wheels and the paint. It's not been great, if I'm honest. So I know other people have had a good experience. Even when the wheels got dropped off, I had a comment about the quality of one of the wheels and was promised that it was going to be rectified, and then that never happened and the company went bust. So it's a bit of a shame. It's fine, they're okay. There's a few chips here and there, and there's some you know, some of the actual finishing wasn't great. And because I guess for lots of people, you know, 5 feet away, you probably wouldn't notice, but obviously I'm a perfectionist, like I've said before, especially in terms of the Rem 550, that build has to be flawless. Not 90% good, not 95% good, flawless. So it helps when you're doing anything to kind of get yourself into that headspace of what are your expectations. Are you going to accept 90% of quality, or are you going to accept a bit more? I accepted it at the time. I guess the question is, well, am I going to do anything about it? Probably not for now, because I've got lots of Euro trips planned. In fact, I've just booked Eurotunnel tickets to go to the Nürburgring in April to spend some time with Gold Leaf Performance. So what I did do though is, and I'll come to this, is actually not in the plan video, the first episode of Rem Builds Phase 2, where I sort of lay out everything I'm going to do. And, one of the things I've done since that I don't think I've never seen anyone else do it is the 911 ST, the 992 ST. The bonnet badge is it's a retro bonnet badge with orange and black rather than red and black. The annoying thing about that is, and this is how fussy I am, the center caps that I had done, especially because the center caps only come, if you buy these wheels or any Saturn wheels from the dealer, they will only sell you center caps with a monochrome crest. I had these made specially with a coloured crest and then a satin on the outside. Now I've got a bonnet or the hood decal that is, or the hood badge that is orange and black. This red and black drives me nuts. So I ended up going out and buying a set of the original Tech Equipment monochrome ones, because you can't get the orange ST style center caps because they're on center locks. So if I can't do that, the next best thing is I can't handle the mismatch. So I've gone for a set of monochrome ones. The other thing I'll reflect on is that I bought really cheap, or what I was supposed to be pretty good, TPMS, tire pressure monitor sensors, and had them fitted. They came with a recommendation and they've been total shit. So what I'm going to do, the tyres, it's on Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. I can't speak highly enough of the tyres. Cold weather, low temps, yeah, hook up nicely. High temps, leaning into them, and I was doing a lot of that in the Alps. Still brilliant. But these tyre pressure monitor sensors were a total pile of shit. Back to genuine ones for me. Well, that's it for another episode of Rem Builds and the Renngineering YouTube and podcast. Thank you so much for watching. That covers the back end pretty much. The only thing I haven't mentioned is this Spyder spoiler here, or the GT4 lowest sort of ducktail spoiler, and I'll pick that up in the next episode as we move round the car. There will be additional parts towards the end, because as you can imagine, I've gone on and added things and, you know, refined the process and figured out what the future looks like for this car. I've talked a little bit about that earlier on. Please do subscribe and make sure you like this episode. There's lots of episodes backed up, so you can see there's going to be stuff coming for the next few months. I've already started booking for 2024, some really exciting episodes where I get to drive some of the best resto mods and the best air-cooled builds in the country. You can watch the heritage episodes where I sit down and have conversations with all sorts of exciting people about their builds, their cars. There's loads more of that coming up as well. Head over to the podcast on any podcast streaming service, and you can find lots of your Porsche stories and other bits of content as well. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you're enjoying these episodes. Before I go, I will talk about one more thing, and that is this hoodie that I know is going to get loads of comments. The hoodie is from Outlaw Gear. I love the guys over there. They're not paying me to do this. I got this as a freebie, yes, but ultimately I just love the gear. They haven't asked me to do this. I've just done it because I love the kit. So outlawgear.co.uk, I think it is, and Outlaw Gear on Instagram. Go and follow them. You can get yourself one of these bits of gear like this merch. Renngineering merch will be coming at some point in the future, so stay tuned for that. But for now though, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Take care for now. Bye-bye.